Hi, so welcome to my video for RZB OpenAI Generator. This is an extension I've made to allow you to use the OpenAI endpoints. You can find these on the OpenAI website. So these are the list of functions that are available in this extension, and there's quite a few. Now we've got some which are for image generation. So I'm just going to double click it. And you can see all the arguments that you need. So you need a prompt, string, model, images, quality, size, style, and ref. Now, where I've put these inverted commas in the parameters help section, what that means is that there is a default value which is set by the extension. So you can just leave it as inverted commas. And this will set it as the default value or a default model or a default size. There'll be instructions on various different options and how to use things in the comment sections of your various objects. So this extension is for iOS and Android. And you can see in the Android one, we put the permissions. Now these are only needed if you're going to be using images from the gallery. So if you're going to be editing images, you need the permission to read images from your device. There is the other option of using the Android picker. We're not going to be using the files frequently. Yeah. The implementation we've got here, com noodles.jig kit, that's there for the tokenizer to figure out how many tokens your prompt's going to use. So again, this is also optional, so you can delete this if you're not going to be kind of calculating how many tokens a prompt is going to take. And this is the iOS one. So just make sure you've selected the tick boxes and copies to tick boxes for your platform. So let's just go through the functions one by one. So we've got the image generation. We've got TTS, which is text to speech. TTS play, which is text to speech, and it automatically plays the audio file generated. So with this one, you won't download a file. It's going to download a temporary file into the apps folder, and it'll play it, and that's it. When you use the function again, that same file will be overwritten. So it's not going to like store the audio file. If you want to store the audio file, copy it, save it, use the RZB OpenAI TTS. Next, we've got OpenAI image edit. Now what this does, it allows you to inpaint into an existing image. I'll show you this later on the app demonstration. OpenAI init, you need to call this when your app starts, and you'll need the API key, the OpenAI API key. And you can get this from the OpenAI website. You need to sign up and then generate a new key. The organization is optional, again, because you see there it is equals inverted commas, inverted commas. The organization name is something you set up in the settings section of OpenAI website. Next, we've got OpenAI image copy. Now, what this does, it just creates a variation of your selected image. So in effect, kind of trying to copy it, but making it slightly varied. So you'll need the PNG image. So this will be a path to an image. Again, you can set an optional model You set the number of images, size, and the ref. AI ref, which can be left blank, it can be used as an identifier to let yourself know who's requested the generation. So this could be any kind of unique reference or the username of the person using the app. Next, we've got OpenAI chat. Now, what you have to bear in mind is there's two ways you can kind of create a kind of conversation. One of them's using assistants and threads, and one of them's using chat. Now, using the chat method is easier, a lot easier. However, what you don't get is the kind of built-in chat memory. So it's useful for kind of one-off questions and where you don't want the questions to follow on from the previous question and responses. So if you've got kind of like, one-off random questions like what's this, what's the capital of this country, what's gas mark 7 converted to degrees, like that. You can use the OpenAI chat. It'll take a question as a prompt and it will just give you a response to it, and then that's it. It's not going to remember the previous responses. So for this one, we've got the AI model, and that's optional as well because you can set the default in the extension. Messages, AI ref, maximum amount of tokens you want to use for the response. So the more tokens you set here, the longer response you can get. If you want a shorter response to kind of limit the cost of the response, then you need to set the max token to a value that you want. There's also frequency. This can affect the response. I can go into this later on. The last parameter is return full JSON, but this will be left out in the newer versions. In all cases, you'll get the full JSON returned, from which you can then extract the required information. Next is OpenAI transcribe. Transcription is where the AI will convert speech to text. So for this, you will need an audio file, and then you will set the path in the first argument. So this could be like a recording that you make at the time, or it could be like something pre-recorded. You're going to make it like clear audio with like less background noise. Here you can set the model as well, the language which defaults to English, string prompt, and the temperature. Translation. This is where you can translate an audio speech to English. Get tokens. Now this works better on the Android because we're using the implementation of somebody else's libraries. And in the iOS, we're using an estimation based on OpenAI's guidance of how much a prompt costs in terms of tokens. Upload file. Now bear in mind this upload file, it uploads to OpenAI. It doesn't upload to your own server. And you can only upload files for two purposes, which is for fine-tune or assistance. So you want to set the file path and then the purpose. You can only choose either fine-tune or assistance. Get private folder. Now I've included this in here just to make it easier for people to use this extension, so you don't have to go and download another extension. And what this does, it gives you the path as a string to a location that the app on the device can access in order to download files and save things. So on iPhone, this is called the support directory. And on the Android, it's going to be the applications private folder. So only your apps have access to it. So if you save things here, users not going to be able to access them. But you can get the path to the file and then you can save it elsewhere. I've got another kind of simple function here, which is play MP3 nano. By default, GameMaker doesn't play MP3s because you can't load it in during runtime. So I've just added this here, just make it easier so you don't have to go and download another extension. It's a very simple function which plays an MP3, and you have to set the path as one of the arguments. So once you've used OpenAI TTS, text to speech, that's going to return an MP3 file which is saved to a location. And then you can play it using this here, RZP play MP3. Another kind of function that you might not use that much is the get models. So what this does, it'll give you a list of models that are currently available for you to use in your generations, such as DALL-E or Whisper. So you'll get that returned as a JSON. You can just go through it and see what the models are. Now this is the most recent one I've added. This is the OpenAI custom request. Now what this does, it just kind of makes it easier for you to kind of use new endpoints that they release after this extension is made. So for example, if they add endpoints for OpenAI Vision, which I haven't included in this one, you can then kind of use this function to access that endpoint. So what you're going to be doing here is setting the type. Now this is the post, the request type. In this one, you can leave it blank, and that will set the default of post, POST. The other options are get, GET, and delete. The second argument is your URL. So what you'll need there is the full URL for the OpenAI API endpoint. Now this could be like completions or something new like vision. So you need to put the full URL for the endpoint there. Now the next one is the custom JSON. Now this, you could leave this blank if, for example, you're using a GET request. Where you want to get, for example, if you're using, if you want to get the models, you get the endpoint URL for the models. For the custom type, you would put get, and you'd leave the custom JSON blank. Same with delete. You just put delete as a custom type. For your custom URL, you put the deletion endpoint, and then your custom JSON would be blank. For the endpoints where you need to supply data, such as parameters like model name, prompt, that kind of thing, you need to construct a custom JSON. This is going to be a JSON string. So it's a JSON structure as a string. That's going to be fed into the function, and it will send this to the OpenAI API. From that, you'll get a JSON response, which you can then parse and get values from. The rest of the functions are for assistance and messages. This is in case you want to create something like your version of ChatGPT, or you want to let users chat in your app, or you want that to be conversational memory. So previous responses, your questions, they'll all be remembered. Just bear in mind the token cost of this can vary. That's something you'll have to look into yourself. So you've got create assistants. This is the first thing you'll have to do, unless you've already created an assistant and you've got an assistant ID. So when you create an assistant, this is like what you're going to use to answer the questions, and you can fine tune it or you can kind of tailor it to give certain specific responses. So for example, you could create an assistant to be like a mechanic or a doctor or a programmer, that kind of thing. So you can put your model name, the name of the assistant, description of it. These are optional, by the way. And the instructions. Instructions are going to be like you're telling the assistant what to do, how to answer questions, how to address the user, that kind of thing. So just give it kind of specific information. And the last one is tools. These are OpenAI tools, so you need to look on the OpenAI website to find out what these are and how to use them. One of them is like coding, so you've got like a tool which helps with coding, and you could add it here. And next thing you want to do is create a thread. This is basically like a conversation that stores all the messages. So you can just run it as it is, which is thread create, and it will return a string with the thread ID. That's the ID that you need to save into a variable to use later on when you create messages. You can also delete the thread by running this, and you need to feed it the thread ID. Okay, so next thing is then creating messages. You need your thread ID, and then you're going to put in the role, which is going to be user, and then the content, which is going to be your question or your prompt. And the last one, you can just leave it blank. Like this. Once you create your message, what you now want is you want a response. So the way you do this is you create a run. So you've got your thread ID and your assistant ID. So this is the assistant that you're going to use to get the response. So you can have multiple assistants, and then you can select one and put this ID here. And the other thing is the instruction. This is optional. If you put any instructions you put here will override the instructions that you use when you set up your assistant. So you can leave it blank, or you can add new instructions here for the assistant to follow. Okay, so once you create your run, it's not going to be immediately giving you a response. So it might take time. So your request is going to be put in a queue, and then what you need to do is use getRun, OpenAI getRun, to check the status of the run. So you need to put in the thread ID and the run ID. The run ID you get from create run. Now it's going to give you a JSON response, and in there you need to check if the status is completed or failed, etc. So once you know that the run is completed, you know that you can get your messages, your responses from the GPT, and to do that you use list messages or list message. You need the thread ID, limit, and order. Now, if you just want the most recent response, which is what I normally do, you just set it as 1. And the order is either going to be ascending or descending, which is ASC, I think, and then DESC. As and this, DESC. And you can see the actual values I've used in the demo, and you can just follow that. Okay, so now you've got your message. You can then display it to your user, and then that's the end of the run. You can then start the cycle again by creating a new message, and then creating a new run, and then get run, and then this message. So for each kind of question, you need to use 4 functions. So create message, create run, then get run, and then finally this message. Once the conversation is ended, you might want to delete the assistant with something that is going to be temporary. For this, you need the assistant ID. So just feed it in there and then run the function. So I'm just going to go into the objects. I'm going to start with the image generation one. It's going to give you a quick kind of preview of how to use it. And you can follow the example, or you can use your own methods. If you get stuck anywhere, just ask a question by email or on the marketplace, on the forum, GMS forums. Okay, so this is the button to generate images, and this is the room. So this is the object that's going to hold the generated image, and then you've got 2 text boxes, one for prompt and one for negative prompt. This one you can select the OpenAI model name, and then you've got the sampler, and then finally the button to generate images. Okay, so how it starts off, when you tap the button, you're checking for internet connection, the OS type, because this only works on Android and iPhones, sorry, iOS. Now these are just kind of variables used by the demo, so you don't really need these. So I'm just going to update the screen telling user that we're generating images and AI generating to one, so we know that we're in the process of generating. Now with your models, there's DALL-E 3 and DALL-E 2. DALL-E 3 is a bit more kind of restrictive and different. It gives you better images, but there's kind of restrictions on it. So you need to kind of set things based on the model that the user wants, or what you said. Yeah. So the first thing is the string length. If you're using DALL-E 2, you've got a string length of 1000. For DALL-E 3 is 4000 characters. And then there's the size. For DALL-E 3, I think it's the minimum size is 1024. Now bear in mind, these are square images. I think they do have an option for vertical. That's something you check and set yourself. But in this example, it's just square images. You've got an option for high definition, and that could be set for DALL-E 3. Here we're just clearing the image, which is going to hold your generated image. So we're going to reset it here. Now with OpenAI generation, you've got the option of generating, I think it's up to 10 images. So here we're just going to have a path array. Now this is kind of it's a local variable. If we set here, And this is how we're calling the function. So when you call the function, it's going to return a value. And the way I've done it is I've stored it into a variable called typesync. Now typesync is going to, in this case, it's going to return this, and that's basically the function name. Now something to bear in mind is that, if I do change the function names later on, this is not always going to be true. So what you might want to do then is have a specific variable and set its value to -1 or blank, and then when you get a response here, check it against that. So you're checking that it's not blank or -1. Now, in case that it immediately generates an error, typesync will have error inside it. So we're doing string count, check if typesync contains error. If it does, then that function is a failure. You can get a message here. And then we're just going to reset everything here. So if it's successful, you're going to get this returned as the response. So we're going to our HTTP asynchronous event, and we're going to get the type from the async load dsmap type. And the other values we get inside the dsmap are status and response. Here I'm just using DGM is just show debug message. I'm just printing out the value returned. So if the value of typesync is this, reset typesync. We want to check if the status, which we get from here, is success. That means it's been successful. And then we're going to go and get the paths from the data value. And in this case, it's an array. So data is an array. So we can get the number of images returned by just doing simple array length. So if we've got 5 images, the array length is going to be 5. We're then going to iterate through the array and get each actual path. So the array has been stored into our variable paths array. So now we're getting the first one, which is going to be 0. So you can see here that we've gone into paths array and we're getting the URL, because the array contains, I think it's an object or struct. So you can get the URL by going .url. We're just going to check that it's valid by checking it's got the dot and forward slashes. If it's HTTP : // and you want to check that it's a valid PNG image. So we're just doing a very basic check. So if it's got the extension of .png, then we know it's a PNG. Okay, we're going to tell the user that we're downloading an image, and then we're going to use the path that we've got from here, and we're going to use sprite add external or extended. So this is going to load in the image from the URL, and then we'll be setting it to the variable SPR. So then that's going to generate an asynchronous image loaded event here, We check that the ID is SPR. And then what we're doing here is we're going to set the image of the sprite. So we're setting the offset to the center. Here we're going to set the image. If it's the first image in the array, we're going to set the image of this, and then update the user that the image is loaded in. And then what we're going to do is we're going to scroll through the paths array in case we've got more than one image. So, you know, if you've got 2 images returned, then it's going to go through this one more time, and then it's going to add the second image to the sprite. Otherwise, we're just going to end the generation process here and reset our paths array. So as you can see, there's the ask section. That's for your basic chat and your chat. This is for like ChatGPT style stuff. So this is for asking, and this is for the chat, the base. This is the more complex version. This way, if you go to the ask, click on top. So what you can see here is we're creating an array, a string array, that is a string an array represented as a string, which we're gonna feed into the function. Okay. So an array is gonna start off with the square brackets, and then it's gonna end with a square bracket, and in between we're gonna put our messages. So we create a DS map. We add role, system, content with our system message. This could be something like you are a helpful assistant. Maybe add that to our message string. Now in my example, I've created a kind of makeshift chat memory in order that your responses are kind of based on or kind of following on from your previous questions and responses. Now you don't have to do this, so you can just leave this bit out. So what I've done is here, I've gone through the prep memory, the conversation memory, and I'm just going to add messages, role, user, and the content is your previous questions that you sent it. And then we're going to add this to our message string. Finally, right at the end, you're going to put in your very latest question. So again, we've cleared the DS map ready for use. We're then going to add the role, user, and then the content. And this is going to be your new prompt. So this is AI prompt. So this is the prompt that it gets from your text box. Could be something like, what is the capital of France? We add this to our message string, and then we close it with the square bracket, and that ends the array. Just make sure you destroy your maps. Here we're just telling the user using the debug console what the final message is going to look like. We're then using RZB OpenAI get tokens to get an estimate of the amount of tokens that this prompt, your new prompt, is going to use. You can see some information here about the costing. So 750 words is about 1,000 tokens, and this is the price for 1,000 tokens. Now the price can vary based on your model and the number of characters. So if you want more exact details, you need to go to the OpenAI website and go find out information from documentation about tokens and costing. So here again, this is where we call the function. So it's going to return a value to type sync, and you get an error and you'll get this string returned. So you need to use string count and check for error colon type sync. So you put in the AI model for our chat, the message string. This is a string array. Our reference, maximum number of tokens, the frequency, and this is the JSON, return for JSON parameter. Okay, so when it's successful, you're going to get an asynchronous HTTP event with DSMAP. You're going to get the type, and then you're also going to get status and response. So this is the same for all responses. You're going to get the type, which you can check against. Status and the response. When it's successful, you're going to get success. You're going to get status of success. Now, what you can do is when you're testing this building up, just use a short debug message and print out the value returned here. So ret, which is the response, and then you can see the JSON structure returned in the console, and then you can determine what values from there that you want to parse out or get. So in our case, what we want is the response. So we're going to go check if we've got choices in the structure. Choices is going to be an array, and we're just checking that the array length is greater than 0. This is the shorthand way of getting the response. So the GPT response is going to be our JSON ret. Now this is so basically we've got return string, and then we're using JSON parse. So this function can be used to parse a JSON string. So now JSON ret is a valid JSON structure. So from that, we're getting the value from choice is 0 because choice is an array. So we're getting the first response. And then there's a message value, and the message value contains user and content. So from that, we want content. We can also parse out the number of tokens used. So this is the total tokens. So that's going to be JSON ret usage total tokens. So if you're not familiar with this kind of syntax, just go read up on how to get values from structures or structs in the GMS manual. So once you've got a response here, in my example, we're just gonna play it. So we've got the text response, we're going to use text-to-speech play. We're going to choose, we put in a model name here. This is the actual response we got from the GPT. So it's just going to play as a voice. And in my example, what I've then done is I've also added the last response, the last user's question into the memory. So your last prompt here, I've just added it to an array, which is AI prep user. The best way to understand this is to kind of read up on OpenAI. But what prep user is doing is just preparing the GPT, the AI, in order to get a better response. So you can use system message to instruct it on what it is. So you can put something like role system, and the content is going to be something like you are a helpful assistant, or you are a doctor, or you are an expert SEO consultant, something like that, or an expert marketer. And then you can prep it like using the role user and your content messages. Like you can tell it how you want responses to be like. So the role is going to be user, and then you'll ask a question like what is the name of this thing, and then your next message is going to be role assistant, as in the AI, and then content is going to be message like this thing is such a thing, and then you can like tell it how you want the responses to be. I think the term they use is called few-shot prompting. It's just to kind of help the AI to get a response in a format or form that you want. Okay, so that's basically the extension. You all follow the same way of using it. So like if you go to edit, copy, this is creating a variation of your image. It's for the same method. So checking the internet connection, setting up our variables, telling the user that we are generating, preparing our sprite, and then checking other variables such as the model here, the string length, yeah. So this is something I'm about to change, because when you're creating an image variation, you're not going to be using the AI prompt. You're not going to be using prompt, because there's no parameter for prompt. The only thing you need to copy an image, create a variation. So for example, if you have a picture of a dog, and you want like four more images of dogs that look similar to it, you feed in the path of your original dog photo or image. You put in the model like DALL-E 2, n, which is the number of images, so you put 4, size, put something like 1024, reference, you might just put the name of your app or the username, and then you call the function, and that's basically it. And then it's going to generate an asynchronous HTTP event. Check the value of type, get your status, check if it's successful, and get your response, and then pass, convert it to a JSON structure using JSON parse, and then pull your values out from it. So in this one, we're going to get an array again of URLs. And then one thing to bear in mind is when you're editing an image, if I'll just show you the rule here, you're going to need to create a mask. Now, OpenAI has like their kind of specific way of creating a mask. It's different in other AI API. The way they do it is they want a transparent background, and the mask is it's going to be solid where you want there to be changes. So if you wanted to change this woman's face, you'd have to make sure that that bit there was solid and everything else around it was transparent. So the way I've done this is I've just created like a round paintbrush so the user can draw the image. And then we'll be creating our mask when we tap in here. So here we're making our mask. And the way that we're doing that is we're using surfaces. So we're drawing transparent circles at the position of each image2 object. Image2 object is just mask of, which is this object here. So we're drawing circles where the user has kind of painted on the sprite, and then we're using the blend mode subtract to create a transparent background, drawing circles, and then saving the surface of the PNG, and then that's being used as your masking. So if you've got any questions, you can use your own way of creating masks. This is just the example that I've used, which is quicker. You might want to make it more accurate, let the user use different brush sizes, that kind of thing. So if you've got any questions, I'll be glad to help. So I'm going to continue by just giving an example of its use in the demo app, and that's going to be on the iPhone. So it's going to go through the various different functions in practice. So thanks for watching. If you do use the extension, don't forget to leave a review. And if you've got any questions, drop me an email, post a comment on this video, or you go to the relevant thread on the gamemaker forums. You can ask there as well. Okay, hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and hope you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. And this video will also be available on TikTok.